Teaching Year 8B persuasive speaking was one of the most challenging and rewarding experiences I hold as a beginning teacher of English. Like building a house, teaching this class required the right tools, resources, effective planning, collaboration with co-workers, and an ability to adapt with the ever-changing conditions of my classroom. When I started construction on Year 8B, my students were constantly disengaged and off-task in my lessons. Trying to build this class felt a lot like this.
Why must life be so hard? Why must I fail in every attempt at masonry?
In particular, two students, T.Elliott and Sarah, were unstable and would instigate off-task behaviour, including calling out, walking out of the classroom, swearing and sleeping. Thus it became quickly apparent that the plans and resources I had worked so hard on were ineffective in engaging what I perceived as my mainstream class in persuasive speaking. I was a little frustrated. The key to constructing Year 8B was getting to know them as individual learners inside and outside the classroom, and aligning my resources and pedagogy with their dispositions, capabilities, values and interests. This was achieved in two ways. Firstly, I started to collect more of my students' work and create profiles for each student. Secondly, to add to these profiles, which was an ongoing process of construction, I would actively discuss my students' behaviour and capabilities with the wider school community, particularly when working with teachers and support staff, and eventually with parents and the wider community once I got involved in out-of-school activities like soccer and the school music. As I started to build these links between home and school, and collaborate with teachers in ESL and corrective reading particularly, it quickly became apparent that a large majority of 8B were in these programs, and despite my perception of 8B as mainstream or an easy class to build, the planners and modelling currently provided in my lessons were never going to be adequate to support a large number of 8B's learning. Ultimately, this was the source of their disengagement and off-task behaviour. With this in mind, it was my responsibility to plan for their language and literacy development. The ESL and corrective reading programs were able to help me by lending me a range of useful resources, as well as suggesting some effective literacy teaching strategies for supporting the class, particularly to Vida and Sarah. With this advice and professional reading, I was able to continue constructing my profiles and effectively plan. I developed a range of differentiated teaching strategies aimed at building literacy and language in my classroom, as well as drawing on students' existing foundations and interests to promote their engagement and enthusiasm. For example, for Tavita, who had reading comprehension issues, I was able to create cloze exercises, adaptive planners, models for comprehension, flowcharts, sentence starters, and multiple scaffolds, so that I could renovate and extend his current language and literacy abilities. Also, Sarah benefited from the same scaffolds and models, but with her added ESL issues, she was provided with notes containing plenty of visuals, so that she could translate before class in order to more actively participate. For the class as a whole, I created and maintained a challenging learning environment, while still including students with difficulties, like Tavita and Sarah. I began to start each lesson with a short literacy, language or reading workshop, where I would actively teach and model the use of language features or reading comprehension skills essential for our persuasive speech unit. These regular exercises allowed students to bring in their own resources and feel success and confidence early on in my lessons. Additionally, a lot of this content, such as rhetorical questions and high modality, was already being taught in the ESL and corrective reading programs. This gave Tavita and Sarah the confidence to take risks and lead reciprocal or collaborative teaching exercises I had designed. Thus, this created a learning environment based on dignity and mutual respect. In the end, the profiles I started constructing were a great way to review and assess the effectiveness of these workshops. I included a simple checklist of knowledge, understanding and skills that students should know by the end of the unit. Using this, it was easy to see trends and effectively plan for student learning and monitor student success. One unexpected encouraging indicator of the success of my literacy and language workshops was in the second last week of term, when Tavita presented a speech on assembly discussing the highlights of the Year 8 camp. Language devices he had previously struggled understanding were evident and applied effectively. Tavita had the confidence to participate within the school community, and within the classroom, his behaviour was improved immensely. In the end, I learned that there is no such thing as a class that is easy to build or that is mainstream. By continually using my student profiles and collaborating with co-workers and the wider community, I know now that I will be able to continually question and evaluate my teaching practice to build the best outcomes